Let's get more reaction now to that historic meeting between Russian and US leaders. We're now joined by the ambassador of Ukraine to Australia, Vasyl Myroshnychenko. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. You also have been listening in to that summit press conference. What are your initial thoughts?
We commend President Trump on his initiative to end this war. And I would like to address some of the comments that the Russian president made, which I think very important to interpret that. And thanks to John Lyons, he's already given you a good analysis of what has happened. But generally, when Putin talks about root cause of war, is independent Ukraine on the map of Europe. That's the only cause of war for Russia. As you know, he planned to take over Kyiv in several days, take over entire Ukraine in several weeks. He invaded Ukraine in 2014. 8 years later, got emboldened by the very weak reaction to his war in Donbass and Crimea, and then he came back with a much bigger war. Can't pursue his imperialistic ambition of destroying democracy next door. You have to understand that Putin has been running his country for 25 years unchallenged. All those business people who came with him are just his cronies who carry his money. This is not their money, and they're, of course, ready to invest in real estate or any other deals in America, because this is Putin's money, and he tells them where they have to invest. So, I mean, Putin is just out there on his mission to revive Soviet Union, to revive the Russian Empire, and of course, it cannot be revived without Ukraine. So, just overnight, as we speak, Russians have attacked many Ukrainian cities, sent many drones. So we don't really see any indication of him ending this war. It's good that the meeting probably took place. I'm very kind of cautious about, totally discarding that. But for now, Putin just used this opportunity to basically, spread his disinformation and spread his narrative, which we've heard many times before.
Ambassador, there's so much I want to get your reaction to, but chief amongst them is this comment that was made by President Putin that, and I quote, "We are convinced that in order to make the settlement lasting and long-term, we need to eliminate all the primary roots, the primary causes." When you hear that and you hear President Putin speaking of the settlement and eliminating the challenges, really, how do you react?
Well, as I have explained, that for Putin, it means Ukraine under the Russian occupation. That's the only root cause of war, independent Ukraine, sovereign Ukraine. Putin wants to take over it. He wants to, conduct a genocide. This is what is happening in the occupied territories of Ukraine. 20% of the Ukrainian territory is occupied by Russia. So he would be happy if he could take over Ukraine and everybody would have just accepted that. But Ukrainians did not accept it. We fought courageously 3 years ago, and he failed to achieve it. And he's been waging this war for now 3.5 years, killing, over 1 million Russians, many Ukrainians as well. But he is not demonstrating any sign of ending this war. He feels like he's got an upper hand. He's incrementally gaining ground. He's getting welcomed as a global leader. And for a dictator who's been, looting his own country for 25 years, who has authoritarian regime in place, I mean, that's like a huge win. And certainly we welcome America's involvement in this to make sure that this war can end. But we all understand it can't end without Ukraine involved, without Europe involved, without different nations who are in Europe, because we can't discuss the security of Europe without Europe at the table. And we all understand how consequential this is going to be for the entire world, for Australia, for other countries, because what we are witnessing is, of course, these are historic moments. And 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we're going to look back and see who did the right thing, who didn't do the right thing, right? And for now, we see Putin is just one of those, really evil men, who's looted his country, destroying Ukraine at the moment, killing Ukrainians, is responsible for those war crimes, crimes against humanity, for an act of aggression, and just having nuclear weapons and using nuclear weapons as a threat saying, look, we're going to do whatever we want because we got nuclear weapons. And that's it. You just have to accept it. And look what we are getting into, right? I mean, he may end up occupying 20% of the Ukrainian land.
Now, Ambassador, apologies for interrupting, but I just want to throw another quote for you from Putin, who said, well, today we need to acknowledge that the security of Ukraine should be ensured as well. Our correspondent, America's editor, John Lyons, had said, well, that was a bone thrown to Donald Trump. But do you think it is along the same vein as you were talking about, perhaps what Putin sees in terms of ensuring Ukraine's security is to engulf Ukraine and make it part of Russia? And that's the only way, in his eyes, Ukraine can be safe.
Well, I don't know, to be frank. I don't understand what Putin says. I mean, it's clearly his imperialistic ambitions are obvious, but definitely for Ukraine, we need boots on the ground from European nations. We need to have strong military. We need to integrate into the European Union, and eventually we'll have to become members of NATO. That's the only way how we can have security guarantees for our future, because Russians, even if we get any ceasefire, they will resupply, rearm, and will invade Ukraine 4 years from now. Russians will not give up on that objective, which is pretty clear in the Russian system, which is pretty clear in the Russian chauvinistic kind of foreign policy which they are pursuing at the moment. And therefore, for us, for Ukrainians, we don't have any other choice. We have to keep on fighting. And strength is the only thing that Russia understands. So Russia must be isolated. More sanctions must be put on Russia. More military support for Ukraine. This is the only thing which Russia understands. And President Zelensky said it very clearly. Russia understands American strengths. And make no mistake, it's American strength. And I hope that behind the closed doors, President Trump clearly articulated what's going to happen if Russia does not agree to a ceasefire and does not agree to, stopping this war, because Russia is the only country which is responsible for this war.
Ambassador, as this summit is taking place, we also understand that Russian troops are still forging ahead, trying to claim as much land as they can from Ukraine. Now, President Zelensky has refused to concede any territory to Russia, but in any negotiations, there would have to be some sort of compromise. What is it that Kyiv would be willing to compromise in order to achieve a ceasefire?
I think it's a wrong question, because we don't have to come with any compromise because we didn't start this war. By asking this question, you're referring perhaps Ukraine is responsible for the fact that Russia has invaded us. No, we are not. We're just fighting back. We're a victim. And Russians invaded Ukraine because they wanted to take over entire territory of Ukraine. We're just fighting back. We don't really understand what kind of concessions we have to make. What is that we have to give up? Because imagine that Australia has been getting invaded by a country and they say, look, we're going to keep 2 of your states, Victoria and New South Wales, in exchange for peace. Will you go for it? And I think it's also important to remind you, I mean, Putin talked about Second World War. I was at a big ceremony at the Australian War Memorial yesterday. It was a very poignant ceremony, but Ukraine lost 12 million people in the Second World War. 12 million. And this is just to give you an idea. You lost 40,000 in the Second World War. We lost 12 million people. And his references to the Second World War are heartbreaking for me personally, because my grandfather, who passed away 1 month before the invasion at the age of 95, he was liberating Budapest. He fought the Nazi. And Ukrainians lost more people, and they followed by Belarus, and only then by the Russians, actually, because most of the battlefield was in Ukraine and Belarus. And you have to understand that what we had to go through in the 20th century, including the genocide of starvation in the 30s, this is what Russian imperialism is all about, which is manifested in the communism and now manifested in modern-day Putin.
And Mr. Ambassador, if I may just ask finally about one of the comments that we heard from President Putin about a, quote, agreement. He said, and I quote, I would like to hope that the agreement that we've reached together will help us bring closer that goal and pave the way towards peace in Ukraine, but no other detail about that agreement. How do you read that?
I think President Trump was pretty clear, no deal until there is a deal. And there must be Ukraine, there must be Europe, they are at the table. It's a good sign. I mean, it would be quite extraordinary if they came up to a press conference and said, we got a deal. without Ukraine there, without European nations, without Britain, without France, without European Union and other partners, right? I mean, this war is the largest war in the world since the Second World War. 650,000 Russian troops on the ground. The movement of the weapons and missiles which Russians are using, it never happened. I mean, it's been a while when last time it happened. And this war and the outcome of this war and the security architecture in Europe will shape the security of Indo-Pacific. Because if one country, which is a permanent member of the UN Security Council, which has nuclear weapons, can do whatever they want with their neighbors, it is a blueprint for any other authoritarian leader, especially here in the region. And I think a lot is at stake for the future security and stability of Australia, of your trade, of your secure supply chains and everything. I mean, I think we're in the same boat. We are fighting for democracy, we're fighting for human rights, we are fighting for rule of law, the values that this country, Australia, was built on.
Ambassador from Ukraine to Australia, Vasyl Myroshnychenko, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me.